Good morning, everyone. I'm Justin Fielder. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Hydro66, and I'm going to be taking you what we call Ready for Roll, which is deploying in an OCP Ready facility that has been pre-certified as being able to take OCP equipment with the minimum fuss possible. What is the OCP Ready program for data centers? Well, it's a program created by the OCP community for assessing data center readiness, data centers such as the one that we run at Hydro66, to take and deploy OCP open racks and the associated equipment that goes with that in a seamless, straightforward, hassle-free way. It's important because it enables you, if you're an end user, to look into the market and to choose facilities where you know that there isn't going to be a series of toing and froing, that your equipment won't turn up and there will be problems with deploying it. It enables you to know and have security and stability in your process for deploying your solution that you wish to run into a data center facility in an entirely seamless way. So if you're a data center and you're thinking, this sounds good, and how would you do it? How do you become OCP ready? Well, there's a 4-step process which I'll take you through, and then I'll give you some insight into how we as a data center have found the process of working with OCP in order to become OCP ready certified. So as I said, it's a 4-step process. The first is you need to become an OCP tiered corporate member. That's simple and straightforward. And then there's a sort of 3-step, second step, which is around the facility recognition requirements. And what that involves is there's a set of facility guidelines which you need to assess yourself against those guidelines, fix any non-compliances that comes from that, learn from that process, and I will touch on that later about some of the learnings that we've learnt, and then to go through an approval process for that site assessment to make sure that when you are said to be OCP ready, that of course you actually are. There's then a legal process to go through where you need to sign agreements. That is a copyright license agreement, the underlying colo solution provider agreement, and then an agreement that enables you to use the OCP Ready certification mark. And then you get on the market and sell it. I'll take you through how OCP are helping in that process, but also what we've been doing in order to spread the message wider about what we can actually do. So on the details of the facility recognition, you need to complete a site assessment. You need to be able to present that to the data center facility community within OCP. We do that, or we have done that on the monthly project call, and basically gain approval. So there's a sort of underlying collaboration process between yourself and the data center facility community to enable them to understand the assessment that you've done, make sure where there are maybe some individual details about your particular facility, that those are resolved to everyone's satisfaction. And then that approved site assessment is presented to the incubation committee to gain underlying fundamental approval. You need to download, so the site assessment and the download links are in this presentation, and review the OCP Colo Facility guidelines for the deployment of open compute project racks and make sure that you as an organisation really are there. So, things like doing dry runs, understanding, making sure your operational staff really understand, particularly around the significant size and weight of OCP racks, and being fundamentally confident that when that rack or racks do turn up, that the intent is able to be executed in a flawless way. So the OCP agreements, as I mentioned, there are 3 of them. There's the copyright license agreement. Again, all links are within this presentation, which you need to be able to execute. So that requires your legal people to understand the implications around that and be able to elucidate that back into your organisation so that you make sure that you're doing things correctly. There's the underlying co-location solution provider agreement. That really is around the sort of practicalities about how you do things. And then there's the certification mark, which is around the OCP Ready, so the way that you're able to use that, what it looks like, and so on and so forth. And so all of those are really important, again, for your organisation to really sort of take them on board as a very positive thing, but also understand, the sort of framework that you need to be able to work within there, because it's really important that the OCP Ready mark is fundamental, that everyone that therefore knows that if they have an OCP rack that complies with the requirements, that any of the service providers that are out there providing colo facilities will be able to take that in a seamless and straightforward and flawless way. So once all of that is done and you're ready to go, how are OCP helping in the sort of go-to-market strategy? Well, here I've just shown you two small examples about the OCP Marketplace, which is a really good website that OCP are running that enables people to find the various components of which now data center facilities is a good part of that. There's a sort of high level but reasonably in-depth overview about the facility, and I've shown two here, ourselves and one other provider. Then there's the contact details, and we've found that this is a good way of generating interest, leads, and therefore that sort of start of that conversation in a customer finding centric way. So they know that they need some facilities, or they know that they need something within the OCP ecosystem. They use the OCP's Marketplace, which is a great resource across the entire ecosystem, and that sort of, I'm a customer that wants something, I will find it. It's been really good for that. And clearly all of the OCP marketing, of which Global Summit is a good example of that, also drives people towards finding more information. Alongside that, of course, we have realised that it's not just on us to rely on OCP to do the marketing for us, and so we indeed have also been doing via social media, creating some videos that I'll show you later about, just to explain what this really means in practice, and giving some insight into our facility, why that is important, and why we feel that our facility is a really good place to basically fundamentally support the OCP story. So to that, I thought I'd just take a short time about talking about how we are adding to the story of OCP, which is entirely embodied around the sort of efficiency and therefore the impact that we as a community are having on the globe, translating into the impact into the climate, the way that we use natural resources, and the sort of end-to-end impact which OCP is really at the sort of leading edge and driving the charge to question, but also provide practical solutions which will minimise the impact of us providing these types of services that this equipment ultimately provides to end users, and the impact that that has on the Earth's ecosystem. So Hydro66 is part of what we're coining the Nordic supercloud. The Nordic supercloud is a collection of the major hyperscalers, as you can see on this map, plus Hydro66. Our facility is up in the north of Sweden. We're just down the road from Facebook. And that gives us enormous advantages, particularly in terms of the ambient temperature, and therefore how that drives the efficiency of us keeping the equipment that we need in order to provide the services for our customers and for their equipment running within our facility. And it drives the efficiency to be typically 10 times or better than the amount of electricity that is wasted based in a major metropolitan area. Also, the Nordics, pretty much all of the electricity is directly renewable. A lot of it is baseload, so we take our electricity feed from river-based hydro, which means it runs 7 by 24 hours. And that's very important because that means that we are fundamentally taking green power at source and using that in order to deliver the services that our customers take from us. And this is very much within the spirit of the OCP approach, where it's not just about looking at how you generate a compute and storage platform. It's about the overall efficiency of that compared to the traditional way of doing it. And in 2014, I remember sending an email just as we were starting to build the Hydro66 platform that we now have. And I sent it to one of our business development people, and I said, having looked at the sort of OCP, the attitude behind it, the general approach, we should absolutely, certainly advertise ourselves as Open Compute Ready. And here I am today talking to you all about how that has directly translated into the facilities that we can offer to our customers. So I just want to take a minute to give you an overview of our facility just for your interest. So here you can see the building in the centre of this diagram. There's a central spine and each of the data halls come off there. It looks a little bit like a heatsink for very good reason. The design enables us to take free air most of the time through the year. There's very few days where we actually physically need to chill the air that we supply to our customers' servers and storage, and we can basically run this in most of the year in recirculation mode, typically wasting only about 5, 6, 7% of the electricity in order to keep the equipment actually cool. So a PUE of 1.07 in normal PUE terms. Each of the halls are configurable. We're dual fed from the national grid at 140 kV and 400 kV, straight off our own dedicated substation. And that therefore means that we can take a very customizable view for our customers on their view of reliability and the cost, and therefore also the sort of finger trouble that sometimes you can get from adding in additional backups for power and security. And clearly there's with the move to software-based resilience rather than relying on hardware-based resilience, there's a lot that you can do in terms of changing the economics of that. We also have our multiple fibre connections, which are fully diverse, as you can see in the diagrams, that enables us to create that private network that I mentioned previously to connect to the hyperscalers, but also onto the general internet. And from here, you can see the actual river. So this river has 4,500 megawatts of generation capacity that will run 7 by 24, 365 days a year, and will provide that as a base load. And because it's river-based hydro, it has absolutely zero incremental carbon about generating that. It's just literally the natural flow of that river from up in the mountains out into the sea. So what does that mean for Hydro66? We sort of think that, you know, anything that anyone can do in order to increase efficiency, but also to access green electricity is fantastic. But for us, it's not just about buying green. So it's not about looking at the sort of renewable energy certificates or the private power agreements that some people do, where they basically buy power in a green area, but actually are still using the sort of less green power within their own facility. So what we've done is we've tried to be green from the off. So it was about our site selection, it was about the underlying design, it was about being transparent about, you know, what we've actually used in order to configure and create the Hydro66 solution. And I thought I would just give you something that maybe will help you get an idea. If you're typically in Germany, that has a lot of non-green power. A 10 kilowatt rack of equipment hosted in a typical major metropolitan data center in Germany will consume about 60 tons of CO2 over a year. That's exactly equivalent to about 66 long-haul flights as per the slide. To host exactly the same 10 kilowatt rack of equipment, it basically uses 4 kilograms of CO2, so 0.004 tons of CO2, which is the same as basically driving to that airport in your taxi before you go and do the 66 flights there and back. Or to put that another way, one server hosted in Germany consumes the same amount of CO2 as 16,000 servers of identical servers being hosted within our facility, our Hydro66. So, and for us, it's about being absolutely hyper-local in terms of the power. So as you saw in the previous diagram, the river, and we have a 70 megawatts that's part of that 4,500 megawatts of generation capacity, local hydroelectric plant, literally about 200 meters away from our facility. As you saw, we're directly connected into the regional transmission grid that then goes into the national transmission grid. And because of our design, because most of the year, typically 4, 5, 6, 7 days a year, we actually need to physically cool the equipment. Most of the time we're just using free air with recycling, particularly in winter, to stop the facility freezing rather than actually cooking itself. Typically our PUE is 1.07 compared to an average of 1.7, so that's 90% lower, or we just use 10%. But also beyond just PUE, we use 25 times less the water footprint compared to some of the more traditional data centers that have been there. And so if you look at the UN sustainability goals, it's about how you use the land, how you use the energy, but also how you use water and the impact that you're having on the society that's around there. And for us at Hydro66, it was very much a holistic view that we took about how we were going to design and try to optimize all four of those key areas from the UN's sustainability goals. How did we do that? Well, the team and people involved in it have operated and built and designed many data centers over a 20-year period. And so we sort of started again. We did clean sheet a little bit in the same manner about the entire OCP ecosystem. It's about, rather than incremental, it's about stopping and thinking about what are you trying to achieve and what is the most efficient way of doing that. And so we looked at resilience, we looked at the way that airflow is done and how you do free air cooling in a traditional data center, how you control humidity, what do you construct it out of. And we really questioned all of those. And so now, as I say, we've got this sort of heat sink design, and the reason for that is, as per this diagram, we take cold air in on one side of that of one of those data halls. We control it very, very tightly using some uniquely designed equipment that we have in terms of air handling, and the way that we mix in the sort of excess heat that you get from the equipment with the cold air. As I said, sometimes it can be -20, -30, -40 outside, so you only need to take in a very small amount. You get crazy stuff like negative dew points, which means you need to stop it snowing inside your data center as you warm this air up. But there's a whole technical process about how we fundamentally get that through. And then all of the heat that we don't need, we just exit out the other side. So it's a very simple, straightforward design. And that really also plays to the entire story, that we're trying to minimize finger trouble, we're trying to minimize complexity. Because if you've read the sort of Uptime Institute reports, 60, 70, 80% of issues in data centers are, human fingers and finger trouble. And so we've made the design incredibly simple and straightforward, which enables us to therefore offer this very rigorously controlled environment, but also modular, configurable, and incredibly efficient and reliable. So what was our experience of OCP Ready? Headline, it was really positive. We found the recognition process very simple. It was self-certification. I said you just need to do that in spirit. Self-certification, which is where you find non-compliances, address them, work with the team, make sure that you're learning from why you have non-compliances and how you do that. But it was really easy to go through that process. It took some time, but it was very, very straightforward, and certainly we learned a lot from it as well. Therefore, that ensures the ability to receive fully populated racks. The timescale was, we had our first meeting in August 17. We then attended the regional summit so we could get our sort of head around the shape. So hopefully this will help you do that today if you're interested in this. We applied in the second quarter of 2019 after we had been through the process. We were comfortable that we were doing stuff ourselves, and that enabled us to get to where we were. We had fantastic support from the OCP team. The evolution of the underlying checklist was really collaborative, and we really like that. We love the online marketplace. That's a great way, and we've created the sort of landing page to make sure that people get the right messaging when they've been through this sort of using the OCP Ready framework in order to identify a facility. And so far we're one of 5 that are out there, and it's very much enabling us to really differentiate ourselves within what is potentially a crowded marketplace. But as I said earlier, we think we have some unique opportunities and some unique features that we offer that other people don't. So in terms of ready to roll, that actually the sort of delivery process around practical issues, you'll see in a video, these racks are tall when they're in a crate. Things like, is the loading bay door high enough, and various other stuff. The sort of testing, where do you test it? Do you pre-ship test it? Do you not do it? There's all of this stuff that is in the detail, but by going through the OCP Ready checklist and by understanding what is the sort of range of equipment that someone could actually deliver to us, that has been very useful in making sure that our facility really is ready for anything that meets the OCP rack guidelines, but is therefore able for us to do it. And how do you get the equipment there? How do you track it? All of that in terms of coordination is very important for you to get ready. In terms of also ready to roll, you need to make sure that you confirm specs that are not in standard, so maximum height, etc., etc. And also, how do you want your racks contained? So do you want a cage around it? That's typical within the data center environment. And also the uplinks. Is this going to a private network? Is it going to the general internet? Do you want high-speed optics? Because, although we're in the north of Sweden, the speed of high-speed optics is we can get to Frankfurt just as quickly as you can get from Amsterdam or London. And actually, it doesn't really matter now because of the ability to use the unbelievable amount of optical bandwidth, particularly in Sweden, driven by the fact that it's, the Sweden and the Nordics are the sort of home of the hyperscalers. So the infrastructure that's in there in zero hop type long haul optics really gives you a lot of flexibility in how you think about your uplink capacity. So we have a direct POP within Stockholm, so that essentially, our facility in the north of Sweden directly appears from a IP and a packet basis as though it's in Stockholm. And that, as demand grows, we will continue to expand our network to enable our customers with their uplink requirements in order to be able to get the solutions that they want. So how's it gone? Well, we've got our first OCP Colo customer that's come through this program called Nordic. They're using IT Renew Sesame racks. That for us is really important because it's about that circular economy, and IT Renew are here at the virtual conference, and I urge you to go and have a look at their stories. It really adds to the sort of hydro impact that you are then totally minimizing your impacts by using the circular economy coupled with the hydro facility in order to deliver that to be the smallest impact, but also has a really good economic upside as well, which you should never forget. That supports the Rapid.Space infrastructure as service offering. That's really cool. You can use a REST API. If you're looking for infrastructure as service that's running on OCP, I would definitely say go and have a look at the Nodexi, or just go online and have a look at Rapid.Space. And there is a good example of something that is running today and gives you a reference point that this stuff really works. And also ourselves, Nodexi is quite happy for doing that themselves. We think there really is a fantastic story here. And of course, there's a wide ecosystem of software vendors out there, from Nutanix, VMware, OpenShift, the Kubernetes stuff, which is really starting to gain traction. And so we'll be bringing those processes to market as well, particularly, again, looking at circular economy hardware. Our partnership with IT Renew is really strong, and we will be delivering quite a few of these products over the next year or so, all based on this: get the most efficient solution that you possibly can for the workload that you want. And so finally, I just thought I'd give you a short video that actually just shows you what OCP Ready actually means. And it means 20 minutes and it's live. So this is where our facility is in the north of Sweden. So this is a facility with a central spine and each of the data halls coming off that I mentioned earlier. Here we're taking delivery of a Sesame fully configured OCP rack. You can see how tall they are, hence that being part of the assessment criteria. These racks are very full and very heavy when they're loaded, and therefore we have a solid concrete floor into our data halls, which enables moving them around very easy, and we have no loading issues. Here you can see the fans which exit the hot air on one side of the data hall, and on the other side is where we bring in the cold air as and when we need it. We just literally take the rack into the space that has been pre-configured for it, plug it into typically red and blue, two separate power feeds, connect it to the pre-configured uplink that we've done as part of the onboarding, and that's it. You're literally ready to run. And so it's as simple as that. You can literally deploy an entire rack in 20 minutes from it turning up in our loading bay. And so here are some links to Hydro66 and the Marketplace that I mentioned. And if you wish to follow up, contact ourselves or the appropriate people at Open Compute, then all of the links are here in the presentation. Thank you very much. I'll take any questions.